All right, well, we're back for the second time today. Thanks for a very helpful comment. I didn't realize that I had closed the stream last night, and only 10 minutes later, episode three was in there. I had, just thought it was over, just like all the other ones were, and closed it down. Went to tell the boys good night, and made that way myself. But there it was, right after episode two was episode three. It is shorter. It's only about 35 minutes, and it does continue. They don't make it quite to John the Baptist yet, as it seemed like they were headed that way, but it does give us a lot more insight about these disciples. Jesus is in the background the entire episode, but there's a long line of people who need healing, and he's healing them. Lepers, those with epilepsy, and all kinds of different things. And the disciples are kind of running shifts, making sure that the people are getting to Jesus, and it basically centers around the disciples' conversation while Jesus is doing this healing. What fantastic acting and camera work this episode! Wow, long, continuous shots. You're really drawn in because there's not this scene cut to this scene cut to this scene. It's just the camera constantly moving around, conversation. You're pulled right into it like you're there. So that's really really well done. Um, One of the disciples, it appears, has some sort of paralysis, and there's a conversation going on asking, why haven't you asked Jesus to heal you? And the disciple is kind of wondering, well, maybe he won't want me to follow. And it's like, well, don't you think he already knows your condition? So there's some of that going on too. Mary, the mother of Jesus, shows up. The disciples, and actually it's Mary Magdalene first who asks Mary about the birth of Jesus. And during her telling of the birth of Jesus, just some little details here and there, it seems more like they're debunking New Testament apocryphal stuff than actually wanting to proclaim the scriptures. And I get it. I feel like a little something was missed there, to talk about the journey to Bethlehem, the visit from the angels, and all of that, rather than, because I don't know if you ever read any of the New Testament apocryphal books, what the History Channel would call the lost books of the Bible, and the things that the church is trying to keep from you, the secrets and all this. But in some of those, Jesus comes out of the womb, talking and blessing his mother, and all of these things. So they wanted to make sure that you understand that the birth of Jesus was a very real birth, like a normal human birth. So they do a little bit of that uh, campfire conversation. They're just talking. Jesus is still out healing, and they talk. They're learning about each other more. And finally, we see this contention still with Matthew and Peter, obviously being driven by Peter. They want Matthew to say he's sorry for basically being a tax collector. They hold that against him. So Andrew joins in. The other disciples begin to join in, and it starts to get a little bit rowdy. And we're looking for some resolution here, but it doesn't come. Instead of that conversation continuing, Jesus comes walking up. It's very late at night, and he has finished this long line of people, finished healing them. And one thing I really like about this is it shows that Jesus isn't just running around waving a magic wand around as he's healing these people. It shows how exhausting this is, and must have been for him. Philippians chapter 2 talks about Jesus. What does it say? Empties himself when the woman with the issue of blood touches Jesus's cloak, and that's not in this episode, but in the scriptures, and it says he felt power go out of him. How exhausting! Not only long days, but but to heal and to do all of this, to love and have compassion, this gut moving love toward all of these people. So he walks up, he's sweating, he's just absolutely exhausted, can barely walk. So Mary, his mother, meets him at the tent, and she's washing his feet, and then she's cleaning his hands, and she says, "You have blood on your hands." So somebody must have, been bleeding or whatever. But what a comment! What a foreshadowing comment for Mary to be able to touch his hand and say, you have blood on your hands. But he spent the entire day healing and forgiving, while the disciples were having conversations. Sure, they were learning about each other, but they were also fighting. Sometimes in the New Testament, when we read that the disciples are arguing with each other, that kind of, sometimes it can come out of nowhere and think, well, the disciples only argued every now and then, but they are all coming from different backgrounds, so that may have been, and very well could have been, a more normal thing. A couple of lines that I really like from this. One was from Mary Magdalene, that they're trying to figure out this Messiah. They have conflicting views about what the Messiah was. Some of them talk about him being more of a warrior and this kind of thing. So others were saying that maybe he's here. We thought he would wait for people to be holy, and Mary Magdalene says he's here because we can't be holy without him. Very, very good line there. Mary, the mother of Jesus, asks Matthew what he does for a living. She notices his clothes, that he has fine clothing. She asks him what he does, and he starts to say what he had done, but then he's corrected. And I think it's Mary Magdalene again, and she says he's a student. Remember back in episode 2 when there's the conversation between Matthew and Philip, that people want to define you by what you were and not by what you are now. Everything's changed because of Jesus, and this is one of those things that Matthew, I was, no, who he is now. He's a student. There is more humor to kind of break things up. One of them, they're talking about things that they had done, and one of them says, "Well, I tried pork once. It was marvelous." Kind of a humorous statement there. But again, it really continues. The disciples are becoming much more refined in their characters at this point. There are a lot of them, and it's hard to keep them all straight, but each has a distinct character trait where you can begin to associate. And again, not necessarily biblical, but for the sake of the show, it's very helpful. Hey, I hope that you didn't miss it last night and you saw them back to back. But if you did miss it like I did, go back to that episode 2 and skip toward the end. And there is a short episode 3 right there at the end. You'll enjoy it. I know you will. And we will see you next time.